Under the shimmering lens of a high-powered microscope, a single human cell pulses softly, rhythmically, almost like it's breathing. It expands, contracts, adjusts its boundaries as if whispering a secret to the world outside. At first glance, it's hard to imagine that something so small could hold the echoes of something as vast and painful as heartbreak. But it does, because when you say your heart is broken, your cells agree. We tend to speak of heartbreak as a metaphor, a poetic way to describe an emotional wound. But there's a growing body of evidence suggesting it may not be a metaphor at all. When people go through devastating emotional loss, like the death of a loved one, a painful breakup, or even social rejection, they often experience real, physical symptoms: chest pain, insomnia, shortness of breath, suppressed immunity, gut dysfunction, and an overwhelming sense of fatigue. Yet doctors sometimes find nothing physically wrong. No wounds, no pathogens, no visible trauma, and still the body suffers. Why? This is the paradox that modern science is now trying to unravel. How can emotional pain, something so seemingly intangible, cause real, physiological harm? Why does the brain's grief spill into the bloodstream, the immune system, the heart? In 2005, a 67-year-old woman was rushed to a hospital in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. She presented with all the classic signs of a heart attack: crushing chest pain, weakness, abnormal EKG readings. But when doctors performed an angiogram to check for blockages, her arteries were completely clear. Her heart hadn't been damaged by cholesterol or clots. Instead, she had been grieving the sudden death of her husband. The diagnosis: Takotsubo cardiomyopathy, also known as broken heart syndrome. Her heart had literally changed shape under the weight of grief. That case, once considered rare and strange, opened a doorway into a hidden world, one where emotions don't just float in the abstract spaces of the mind, but cascade through every organ, every molecule, every cell. Researchers began to ask, what's happening beneath the level of the organ? What's happening at the cellular level? The answer is staggering. Our cells are not passive passengers in the story of our lives. They don't sit quietly while our minds carry the burden of heartbreak. They listen, they respond, they adapt or collapse based on the signals they receive from our emotional brain. In fact, when we experience deep emotional pain, our body's chemical messengers, like cortisol, norepinephrine, and cytokines, flood into the bloodstream. These molecules carry the story of our suffering straight into the cells, and sometimes the cells break. So the real question is this: what actually happens to our cells when we fall apart emotionally? Do they just weather the storm, or are they forever changed by it? In this story, we'll travel beneath the surface of heartbreak, past the tears, the memories, the ache in the chest. We'll go microscopic, to the realm where cells sense danger, where mitochondria falter, where inflammation ignites, and where even the language of DNA is rewritten by grief. Because heartbreak, as we're beginning to learn, isn't just emotional, it's cellular. Long before love songs, diaries, or spoken words, there were cells, tiny, ancient, and alert to danger. The first cells to emerge on Earth had no eyes, no hearts, no language, but they had something powerful: the ability to sense threats, a shift in temperature, a sudden lack of nutrients, a chemical signal from a nearby predator. These cues triggered a cellular reaction. To survive, cells had to be responsive. They evolved intricate ways to detect and adapt to stress. Over time, those raw survival responses became the blueprint for what we now recognize as emotions. Emotions are not abstract. They are biological. Commands refined over millions of years to protect us. Fast forward through the vast sweep of evolution, and those primal signals didn't vanish. They got layered, braided into new systems. The single-celled survival reflex became a neural cascade. What started as a molecular twitch eventually shaped the way multicellular creatures like us experience fear, sadness, and yes, heartbreak. Our emotional states aren't ghosts in the machine. They are the machine. They are electrical, chemical, and hormonal events that pulse through the body, changing its structure and function in real time. This is the foundation of a revolutionary field known as psychoneuroimmunology, the study of how the brain, nervous system, and immune system are intricately linked. What we think and feel doesn't just stay in our heads. It cascades down into our bodies like a waterfall. Every heartbreak, every surge of grief, every whisper of loneliness sends a message deep into the flesh. When your heart breaks, your brain doesn't just process sadness, sets off a survival protocol. The hypothalamus, a command center nestled deep in your brain, springs into action. It signals the adrenal glands perched above your kidneys. In response, they release cortisol, the body's primary stress hormone. That cortisol floods your bloodstream, sharpening your senses, mobilizing energy stores, preparing you for what your biology assumes is a physical threat. But here's where the ancient logic clashes with modern pain. There's no predator to fight, no wound to bind, no physical escape to make. The stress response has no outlet, and so the damage turns inward. Your white blood cells, designed to fight infection, begin to behave erratically. Some become hyperactive, triggering unnecessary inflammation. Others grow sluggish, leaving you vulnerable. You're got home to trillions of microbes essential for digestion and immunity shifts. It's microbial balance. The healthy bacteria decline, inflammation-promoting species rise. Even the barrier lining your intestines may weaken, allowing harmful molecules to leak into the bloodstream, further fueling immune chaos. And the consequences are measurable. People in the midst of heartbreak are statistically more likely to catch colds or the flu. Their wounds, literal or emotional, heal more slowly. Their inflammation markers spike, echoing the patterns seen in chronic diseases like arthritis or cardiovascular disorders. Depression and loneliness are not just states of mind. They are whole body events with biological signatures. What this means is profound. Heartbreak isn't metaphorical, it's physical. The poems and songs are write about the pain, but the body knows it first. What you feel as sorrow, the body interprets as a crisis. The language of cells doesn't distinguish between emotional abandonment and physical trauma. In both cases, it prepares for survival. So when we talk about being broken-hearted, we're not just being poetic. We're describing a real biological process and ancient reflex born in the first cells of life, carried through evolutionary time, still shaping our every breath and heartbeat. Emotions are not the opposite of biology. They are its most sophisticated expression. In the early 2000s, neuroscientists began to uncover something startling. The human brain does not neatly categorize pain into physical and emotional boxes. In one groundbreaking study, participants underwent functional MRI scans while experiencing social rejection, being excluded from a game or receiving cruel feedback from a supposed peer. The scans revealed that the anterior cingulate cortex, a brain region traditionally associated with the experience of physical pain, lit up just as it would if the subjects had been burned or bruised. The brain, it turns out, cannot tell the difference between a broken leg and a broken heart. This discovery shattered a long-standing assumption in medicine that emotional pain is somehow less real, less urgent, less consequential than physical injury. If the brain responds to emotional loss with the same alarm signals as bodily harm, what does that say about how we treat emotional suffering? Further experiments added fuel to this fire. In animal studies, lab rats and prairie voles separated from bonded partners showed dramatic changes in immune function. Their white blood cells stopped responding normally. Inflammatory cytokines surged in their bloodstream. The separation, which to an outside observer looked harmless, was biochemically traumatic. Their bodies behaved as though they had been injured. The implication was clear. The immune system listens to emotional bonds. When those bonds break, the body responds as if under attack. No condition exemplifies this mind-body mystery more than Takotsubo, cardiomyopathy, colloquially known as broken heart syndrome. First identified in Japan in the 1990s, Takotsubo named after a Japanese octopus trap due to the peculiar ballooning shape the heart takes on during an episode occurs primarily in women and is almost always triggered by extreme emotional trauma, the death of a spouse, a sudden breakup, even a shocking piece of bad news. The symptoms mimic a heart attack, crushing chest pain, shortness of breath, a sense of doom. But when doctors check the arteries, they're often clear. The heart isn't clogged, it's stunned. The left ventricle, responsible for pumping oxygenated blood, temporarily loses its ability to contract properly. The heart literally changes shape under emotional pressure. Though the heart often recovers, the episode can be dangerous, even fatal, and its mere existence poses a profound dilemma. If heartbreak can cause this level of physiological dysfunction, why don't we treat it with the same urgency as a stroke or a fracture? Why is a broken heart still dismissed as poetic, when in fact it can hospitalize you? This disconnect runs deep. In most healthcare systems, emotional distress is categorized under mental health, often stigmatized, underfunded, and siloed away from real medicine. But science is painting a very different picture. The body doesn't make that distinction. When someone is grieving, or rejected, or abandoned, their nervous system launches into a full-scale response. Their cortisol rises, their immune system flares, their gut microbiome destabilizes, their heart muscle can literally deform. What more evidence do we need that emotional pain is biological? And so, we arrive at a critical question, one that challenges not just medicine, but our entire view of human suffering. Is heartbreak just an emotion, or is it a full-body emergency signal? If we truly believed the latter, how would our world change? Would we check in on the grieving like we do the injured? Would hospitals have grief wards? Would our treatments and policies reflect the truth that biology already knows? In the silence that follows a heartbreak, the body does not wait for permission. It begins to respond, to adapt, to ache. It does not ask if the wound is visible. It knows there is danger, and it begins to fight for survival. As we dive deeper into the biology of heartbreak, the story becomes even more unsettling and more urgent. Emotional trauma doesn't simply stir the nervous system or affect the heart in the short term. It begins to infiltrate the body's core defenses, rewriting how we age, heal, and even survive. One of the most serious, yet often ignored, effects of chronic emotional pain is immune dysregulation. People who experience prolonged grief, unresolved breakup trauma, or deep social isolation often find themselves getting sick more often. Viruses that once lay dormant like Epstein-Barr or herpes can reactivate. Autoimmune conditions such as lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, or Hashimoto's thyroiditis can flare. Recovery from even routine surgery slows down, and wounds both internal and external take longer to heal. This is not psychological weakness, it's biological wear and tear. Scientists have begun to trace these effects to something more intimate than the immune system, the cellular aging process itself. At the end of every chromosome in our cells lies a protective cap called a telomere, which functions like the plastic tip of a shoelace, preventing DNA from unraveling. Every time a cell divides, the telomere shortens slightly. When it becomes too short, the cell can no longer divide and either dies or becomes senescent. It's one of the most reliable markers of biological aging, and heartbreak when chronic and unrelieved accelerates this process. In a pivotal study from the University of California, Researchers looked at the cells of women caring for terminally ill spouses. The emotional toll of watching someone you love fade away day after day had left a physical imprint. Their telomeres were significantly shorter than those of women the same age who weren't under such stress. In biological terms, their cells were nearly a decade older than they should have been. That's a 10-year penalty for love and loss. The question is, how many people are silently paying that cost with no one to notice? And it doesn't stop at aging. Emotional trauma can also shape our gene expression through a process called epigenetics, in which environmental factors like stress can turn on or turn off specific genes without altering the underlying DNA. After heartbreak, genes that regulate inflammation can become hyperactive. Genes involved in the production of stress hormones like cortisol may become permanently dialed up. Fertility-related genes, especially in women, can be down-regulated. In effect, the body begins to shift from a thriving mode to a surviving mode. Reproduction, growth, immunity, all of it gets sacrificed in the name of emotional threat. And, unlike visible injuries, these changes often go undiagnosed. They remain hidden in plain sight. Yet despite this flood of biological evidence, society continues to misunderstand heartbreak. We treat it as a minor inconvenience, a passing emotional storm. Friends say, asterisk, you'll get over it. Strangers suggest, asterisk, just move on. We view deep grief or prolonged sadness as a failure of character rather than a physiological wound. But what if we've gotten it backwards? What if heartbreak is not weakness, but injury? What if it demands not tough love, but real care? The conflict becomes sharper when we consider how emotional pain is often treated within the medical system. People suffering from heartbreak-related symptoms, chronic fatigue, sleep disruption, stomach issues, or even chest pain are frequently misdiagnosed. Some are told they have generalized anxiety disorder. Others are offered medications for depression. Still, others are dismissed entirely. And in the absence of a visible wound or lab result, their suffering remains illegible to the system. We are living in a paradox. Biology takes heartbreak seriously. Culture does not. This mismatch carries consequences. Without proper recognition, people in emotional distress are left to believe their suffering isn't real, or that it's somehow their fault. They're asked to snap out of it, to function normally, to be strong. But their cells are already under siege. Their immune systems are already confused. Their telomeres are already burning down like candles in the dark. Move on is advice we give the mind, but the body can't follow that quickly. Not when every cell still remembers. In this conflict between science and culture, between biology and belief, one thing becomes clear. We have grossly underestimated the physiological power of heartbreak, and in doing so, we've left millions to suffer in silence, disconnected, not just from others, but from their own biology. The question now is, what are we going to do about it? The deeper we dig into the biology of heartbreak, the more astonishing the picture becomes. We began this journey by asking whether emotional pain can affect the body. But now, a far more provocative possibility is emerging, one that challenges not only our science, but our very understanding of what it means to feel. What if heartbreak doesn't just affect the body in the moment, but becomes part of it? What if emotional trauma doesn't just hurt the cells it's stored in them? This is the frontier of trauma biology and what some researchers are beginning to call cellular memory. Traditionally, the nervous system has been seen as the seat of experience, but studies are now suggesting that immune cells, gut cells, and even neurons embedded outside the brain, especially in the heart, may retain echoes of past emotional injuries. When the body is exposed to emotional trauma, it doesn't simply react and move on. In some cases, it remembers. One of the most surprising sources of insight comes from a strange and controversial phenomenon. Heart transplant patients reporting new cravings, emotions, or memories that seem to belong to their donors. A young woman who hated fast food suddenly craved chicken nuggets after receiving the heart of a teenage boy. A man began having vivid dreams of falling water only to discover that his donor had died in a diving accident. While these stories are anecdotal and debated, they persist across cultures and cases. They force us to ask an unsettling question. Could emotion, memory, or even aspects of identity be biologically embedded in the very tissues of the body? Supporting this idea is a fast-growing field called neurocardiology, which has revealed a stunning fact. The human heart contains approximately 40,000 neurons, an entire nervous system embedded within the organ itself. This heart-brain doesn't just receive commands from the brain, it sends signals back, influencing cognition, emotion, and decision-making. When you feel a sense of dread in your chest, or intuition in your gut, it's not just metaphor. These are real, traceable pathways. And here's where it becomes deeply personal. When someone you love dies, or when you experience a profound emotional rupture, your heart doesn't just ache, poetically it screams. Neurochemically, it sends distress signals up the vagus nerve to the brain, alters the production of neurotransmitters, and disrupts the synchronization of the body's internal rhythms. This is why heartbreak can cause both insomnia and exhaustion, brain fog and hypersensitivity, numbness and overwhelming emotion. The disruption isn't psychological, physiological, and it travels through networks far beyond the brain. The twist, then, is this. Heartbreak is not in your head, it's in your blood, in your immune system, in your microbiome, in the very folding and unfolding of your DNA. Emotional trauma, especially when unresolved, doesn't just haunt your memories. It changes your biology, and it may linger, stored in the tissues and cells that once bore witness to the loss. This realization shatters the old myth that feelings are fleeting, intangible wisps of consciousness. In reality, they are molecular. They leave traces in proteins, gene expression, and cellular signaling pathways. The body is not merely the stage upon which emotions act, it is the archive in which they are recorded. We are just beginning to understand the full implications of this. If heartbreak leaves a biological footprint, then healing must also reach the body, not just the mind. Talk therapy may need to be paired with anti-inflammatory treatments, nutritional support, gut microbiome restoration, or even epigenetic interventions, because the story of emotional pain doesn't end with the crying. It continues in the cells long after the tears have dried, and perhaps, most movingly, this means that love itself, our most ephemeral, poetic, and human emotion is also deeply, viscerally, physically real. It changes us at the deepest level, and when it breaks, the body grieves right alongside the soul. For decades, heartbreak was seen as a metaphor, something poetic, emotional, intangible. But modern science no longer sees it that way. Today, researchers across fields from cardiology to immunology to neuroscience agree on a striking new understanding. Heartbreak causes real injury. It activates the body's stress machinery, elevates inflammatory molecules, disrupts neurochemical balance, and weakens immune defenses. The body does not treat grief as an abstract feeling. It treats it like a trauma, like a wound, like something it must survive. This insight changes everything about how we view healing. Recovering from heartbreak isn't about getting over it or moving on. It's more like recovering from surgery or a serious illness. Slow, layered, physiological. Just as a broken bone requires rest, nourishment, and careful rehabilitation, so does a broken heart. The damage touches multiple systems. It rewires the brain's threat circuits. It inflames the gut. It distorts hormonal rhythms and immune signals. To heal fully, the entire body must be supported system by system, cell by cell. Fortunately, Science is also beginning to illuminate what that healing process can look like. Social support, long underestimated, has been shown to restore balance in the nervous system. Warm, nurturing relationships increase oxytocin, the body's primary bonding hormone, which in turn reduces cortisol, the main stress hormone elevated during grief. One study found that widows who spent regular time with grandchildren or close friends had significantly lower inflammatory markers than those who were isolated. In the body's language, love is medicine. Asterisk, asterisk, mindfulness and compassion-based meditations, asterisk, asterisk, have also shown measurable effects at the cellular level. Researchers at the University of California found that individuals who practiced loving kindness meditation experienced a rise in telomerase activity, an enzyme that protects the ends of chromosomes and slows cellular aging. In essence, choosing calm, empathy, and self-compassion is not just a psychological practice, it's a molecular one. It tells your cells, we are safe now. You can begin to repair. Other pillars of healing are refreshingly simple, yet often overlooked. Sleep is critical. It's when the brain clears neuroinflammatory waste, when the immune system recalibrates, and when the heart rate and blood pressure return to baseline. Movement, even gentle walking, stimulates endorphins, regulates glucose, and helps retrain the nervous system away from hypervigilance. Connection, whether through shared meals, pets, music, or faith, has been shown to activate brain circuits associated with trust and safety, countering the isolation that heartbreak imposes. What all of this points to is a beautiful, humbling truth. Asterisk, asterisk, you cannot will your body to move on, but you can create the right environment for it to heal. This is not weakness. This is biology. Your body is not slow or stubborn, it is devoted. It holds on to love fiercely, and it mourns that loss with equal intensity. That is not a flaw in the system. That is the system. Stories of resilience reflect this truth vividly. In long-term studies of grieving spouses, the most powerful predictors of physical recovery weren't time or toughness, they were connection, meaning, and care. A widow who began volunteering at a local shelter saw her sleep and immune function gradually return to normal. A grandfather who took up gardening after losing his partner showed reduced cortisol levels and improved heart rate variability. These aren't miracles. Their physiology. The body remembers pain, but it also remembers love. And perhaps that is the clearest insight of all. The body grieves because it loved. The immune system, the heart, the gut, they all respond to heartbreak because they were participants in connection. You are not imagining it. You are not broken. You are healing slowly, bravely, biologically. And the path forward is not to suppress the pain, but to support the body that bears it. In the end, healing from heartbreak is not about forgetting. It's about reweaving the body's systems back into balance, using the same ingredients that once made us whole: sleep, breath, movement, care, and above all connection. Because even when love is lost, its biology remains. And it is through that same biology that we begin to find our way back. Somewhere in your blood, in your DNA, in the microbiome of your gut, there is the echo of every connection you've ever made. It's not just metaphor, it's molecular. The body remembers love, not as an idea, but as chemistry, as shape, as rhythm. Every person you've ever truly bonded with has left a trace, not just in your memories, but in your physiology, in your cortisol cycles, in your immune responses, in the folding patterns of your proteins. Love writes itself into your biology, and so, when love is lost, of course it hurts. Of course the body breaks, because it's built to care. Maybe this is the true meaning of heartbreak, not weakness, not failure, but proof of our deepest evolutionary design. We are not solitary creatures. We are woven for connection, programmed to bond, to attach, share in the biology of another. And when that bond breaks, the pain is not optional, it's essential. It is the body's way of honoring the connection, mourning it, making space for healing. Heartbreak hurts, not because something went wrong, but because something went right. Because you loved, because you let someone in so deeply that their absence became physical and still. Even in the grief, even in the breakdown, the body does something extraordinary. It begins to rebuild. Slowly, quietly, beneath your awareness, your cells start. The long work of recovery. Your heart, stunned, distorted, begins to find its rhythm again. Your immune system recalibrates. Your brain rewires. Your gut flora shifts toward balance. Not quickly, not easily, but always, persistently, towards healing. That is not just resilience. That is biology's quiet kind of hope. Perhaps, then, the most profound truth of all is this. We are not just built to love, we are built to survive the loss of it. To mourn, to adapt, to remember, and to risk loving again. Because even though heartbreak leaves scars, those scars become part of how we grow. They are the body's testament to what mattered. So if your cells suffer when love is lost, what does that say about what love really is? Maybe love isn't in the heart. Maybe it is the heart, and in the final image, under the lens of a microscope, a single cell damaged, but healing pulses once more. Not as it was before, but still alive, still listening, still reaching.